This week on the Communicators, a discussion on federal policy affecting the video game industry. Our guest is Michael Gallagher of the Entertainment Software Association.
Our guest this week on the Communicators serves as the president and CEO of the Entertainment Software Association. Michael Gallagher, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
It's a long title, but is it fair to say you represent the video game industry?
I have the honor of doing that. Yes, I do.
Also joining us in the discussion today is Mike Musgrove. He is a consumer tech reporter for the Washington Post. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Mr. Gallagher, how would you say that Washington, D.C. looks at the video game industry?
I think it's an evolutionary look. I think that we're now looked at as a high technology, high growth sector that's providing entertainment that is really capturing the imagination of the American public. And I think you have more and more politicians in Washington that experience video games either through their children or through their grandchildren, and they're seeing the breadth of the entertainment that we bring, and I think there's more of a fascination with the growth that we're experiencing right now, and then that's probably how we're principally perceived right now. That and as a job engine for growth.
So would you say they not only look at it as kids' games then?
Oh, it's far beyond just kids' games. I mean, now, one of the things we're most pleased about, we're beginning to be reviewed in the print media along with movies as mainstream culture, much like movies, much like you would review music, same thing you do with video games. It's not just for kids. They're very much a broader range of titles, broader range of interests.
So if you're getting more attention, does that make your job as a lobbyist or a liaison to Capitol Hill harder or easier?
I think right now it's easier because we have a terrific story to tell. We have titles that are available for all ages, everything from E for everyone. About 45% of the titles are rated at that level. E10 plus is another 12%, and T is about 30%. That's the market that we're in. We're about sports, adventure, and lots of activity now. Things that you haven't seen historically with video games, you're seeing a lot of it now.
Mr. Musgrove.
Well, Michael, when you go to Capitol Hill to lobby, do you do the same? Do you have the same priorities? Do the same work as the Recording Industry Association, the Motion Picture Association of America? Do you have the same concerns, or are yours different because you're more more technology focused?
You know, it's a great question because we share much in common with music and with movies in the sense that at the kernel of what we do, it's entertainment, it's intellectual property, and the protection of intellectual property is vitally important to the artists and entrepreneurs who make our games, and that are satisfying so many American households right now as we go into the holiday season. So we share that in common. Where we diverge a bit is we're incredibly dynamic, incredibly high growth. Interactive is built into what we do, whereas music and movies tend to be a one-way communication.
Mm-hmm. And piracy is also a huge problem in your industry. Is it the same with the recording industry or the film industry? Is it bigger or smaller with your industry?
Well, it's a very significant issue for our industry, no doubt about it. And we have our energy focus at ESA both at what they call hard goods piracy, which is the actual discs themselves or the devices that are used to manufacture discs. But also, we look at the online piracy is of primary concern because it has such growth potential, and the game can get out so quickly to so many people. We have some extra protections that the other industries don't, and we rely on those to hold together the value equation for our industry. But anti-piracy is very, very important.
Mm-hmm. When you say extra protections, what do you mean?
Well, when you have the consoles, when you bring home a Nintendo Wii, Microsoft Xbox 360, or Sony PlayStation 3, that's how 90% of the games are consumed and played by our customers. When those boxes have protections that will only play legitimate games. They won't play pirated or copied games, and that's vitally important to us as an industry. And there is a law, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which preserves that and says it's a federal crime to tamper with that mechanism inside of those devices. So that sets us apart from movies or music where they don't have those protections in the devices that are in the home.
There's always a discussion between having those type of safeguards in there and also from those who argue for fair use. And a discussion not only taking place in the community, but on Capitol Hill as well. Do you see things within Congress, especially in the one coming up, that would tackle these kind of issues? And what's top on that list that would probably concern you?
Well, from our perspective in Washington, this is why you have ESA. This is why you have a trade association that looks after the interests of the industry and the employees and the entrepreneurs, the investors in the art form that we create. So we can look after those issues, because the DMCA has challenged every year there's legislation introduced that would seek to set it aside or water down its protections, and we're the ones that stand there to protect the interests not only of the artists and the people, the computer scientists that make these things happen, the programmers, but also the consumer. The consumer gets great games because the value chain is preserved.
And so, in that case, looking at specific legislation, I mean, is there legislation that would challenge that, specifically either rewriting or changing the DCMA?
DMCA, and Mr. Boucher has legislation he introduces every year that would seek to water down those protections, and we continue to be very vigilant to inform legislators about that impact, not just on our industry, but on others as well.
But does it concern you that even with the gains by Democrats in Congress, plus a Democratic administration coming in, does that change the playing field, so to speak?
We had a Democratic administration for the last 2 years, and our case was sold very well, and we continue to believe we have the right side of the argument and continue to succeed. And with the incoming administration, if you look at President-elect Obama's technology platform, he specifically calls out protection of intellectual property overseas, but also protection of intellectual property at home. So we're encouraged by what we see there. You also just had the Pro-IP Act pass, which places a intellectual property enforcement coordinator in the White House. So we're very encouraged by seeing that and want to make sure the resources are there to make that be an effective position.
Have you ever considered, well, the recording industry is known for going after people who download files illegally. They've filed thousands and thousands of lawsuits. Have you ever, has the ESA, or have you considered taking this route?
Well, fundamentally, we have a great relationship with our consumers. Our consumers love the products that we're making. They're flying off the shelves, and they see great value in paying the price points for the software that we make. So we're very encouraged. We're in a far different position than music, which saw they had very light protections on their product, and then the value equation of free became overwhelming, and the public became very accepting of just simply, oh, the way you get music is just to download it and rip it off the internet for free. We're in a different situation because our companies have seen that threat coming, and we've built some protections in. We also have a better value equation with our consumer and with our customer, and so we look to continue to foster and grow that as our primary means of defeating piracy, making sure it's always worth it to buy the game as opposed to burning it.
Mm-hmm. Do you get a lot of questions on Capitol Hill about the amount of violence in video games? I mean, surely there's a wide range of games out there, but the ones that you're going to see advertised on, primetime television are typically like a Call of Duty or some shoot 'em up that looks violent to people who don't play video games.
We get some calls from time to time, but we have a great story to tell when those calls do come in. And one thing, Mike, I would just point out, and I think we know that, but we've got a number of games out there being advertised very aggressively that are not violent. Right? When you look at all of the entertainment that comes on the Wii, it's incredible family entertainment. You look at Rock Band, Guitar Hero, SingStar Lips, music as a medium, the sports games. There's a whole range of games there that are very exciting, very fun, that are not in that category. The ones that are in that category, we as an industry have the Entertainment Software Ratings Board, which the Federal Trade Commission says is the best in the business in media on labeling what's in the game, making sure that parents are informed. Then we work with retailers. In turn, the ESRB works with retailers to make sure they enforce that at retail much better than the movie industry does with R-rated tickets at the box office. And then we have the extra level of protection for families in the home that no one else has, is that you can set your box, your console in the home, to lock out games you don't want to play. So you have that, you can rest at ease that even if your son or daughter did come by one of those games, it won't play in your home because you set those locks on the device. So we think that we are very responsible about addressing those issues, and we're happy to answer those questions when they come.
Mm-hmm. I have a 7-year-old stepson, and I use those locks all the time.
And my kids are 13, 15, and 17, and they're pretty industrious about trying to break them, but absolutely, they're very useful.
Everything is self-regulated, so you're saying that self-regulation is working?
Self-regulation, it's not just, more importantly, it's not me saying it, it's the Federal Trade Commission says it. In May, they issued their report, which was very strongly in favor of the industry. And then just recently, the National Institute on Media and the Family issued their annual assessment of the industry and gave the ESRB and retailers very high marks, A's and B pluses, for their performance in meeting the needs of the American family. So it's not more important than just us saying it, it's others saying that.
So you don't envision legislation that would go after or at least toughen the content, or at least either by rating or by ability to sell to the general public by content?
Well, we're in Washington, and we're paid to be vigilant. So, of course, we are very watchful over those types of concerns. We believe our story is a good one. We believe the information and the relationships we have will be successful, and we won't see those that move forward, especially at the time our country's in right now, when we're engaged in 2 wars. We've got very significant economic issues. We have the problems with the automotive industry, global warming. Legislation where we are really doesn't look like it would resonate very deeply with the American people, not to mention the fact that the states have tried to legislate on content, and 9 different times we've taken them to federal courts, and 9 different times we've won, knock on wood.
They're still pending, though. Some in California, or if I recall?
There's one that's still pending in the Ninth Circuit. We just had the Court of Appeals argument out there, but we prevailed in the lower courts all the way up. So,
what's the basis, just for those who may not understand?
Well, the states will pass laws to restrict the sale of M-rated games at retail, making it a crime for a store clerk to sell an M-rated game to someone who's underage. And those are restrictions of speech that have been found unconstitutional by, again, 9 different federal courts. And then the real challenge for the states, especially states like California, where they're enduring such fiscal problems, is they have to pay our attorney's fees when we win. And that was nearly $300,000 when we prevailed just about 6 months ago. And they had to send us a check for $300,000 to reimburse us for a lawsuit around a statute that should never have been passed.
One more thing about content.
Sure.
Common Sense Media this week released a study. It was done in conjunction with NIH, and it took a look at other studies that were done as far as the end result of young people watching various types of media, video games being put into that group. It says that of the studies, and I'm just reading here, 75% reported that more time spent with media was associated with a negative health outcome, while 20% found no statistically significant association between media and the health outcomes. Do you buy those results?
You know, I view those with a grain of salt. There's research on both sides of the issue, and what I would point anybody who's interested is back to a book called Grand Theft Childhood, which came out this spring, written by 2 Harvard scientists funded by the Department of Justice, which takes a very balanced look at children's exposure to violent video games and what that really means. And I think it's very balanced in its approach, and it reaches some, I think, very encouraging and thoughtful conclusions, which are much more positive than the Common Sense Media study. And then the other one is the Pew Institute did a study about 2 months ago, which looked at what number of children are playing games, what percentage. It's 99% of boys, it's 94% of girls, so basically everyone under 17 are playing. And that you don't see, what the activities you do see them engaging in, building cities, making civic decisions, engaging in other activities, and it turns out that when you're playing games, the video game active culture in youth are much more active in their physically and in their community than those who don't play games. So I think there's some very encouraging data out there as well to balance out that study.
So you brought up the economy. Video game sales have been pretty good so far this season. Do you think this is a recession-resistant or recession-proof industry?
Yeah, we're cautiously optimistic. The industry has had a fortunate position of being at the right stage in a technology cycle, in the sense that we've sold a lot of consoles, and the consoles pretty much define the marketplace for our games. They're also played on PCs. As we know, those are very highly penetrated in the U.S. So there's a large marketplace to sell video games to. The games are really good. I mean, you know, all the different adventure and music games that are available. So the content is rich. The devices are out there. Plus, most importantly, the American consumer right now is flying to quality. There's a flight to quality, and video games are the quality they're looking for because they're great entertainment, and you can play them for hours and hours and hours. And so we're seeing the results coming back that are encouraging, and we should certainly do better than any other form of media. But again, we're cautiously optimistic because the economic forces that are in play are very profound.
Has the success of Nintendo been most of the driving force driving this entertainment form into the mainstream?
I would say Nintendo's done more than probably any other company to open up the marketplace and show the rest of the competition that the mainstream America, that women, senior citizens, and other, quote, non-traditional video game constituencies are worth going after. Because you do that, you make more money as a company, and you're able to prosper. You prosper. And so now you see other companies responding very much in kind, which is great for the industry. It's great for the industry. It's great for the American people. But certainly Nintendo paved the way in recent years.
Mm-hmm. So I think you just came back from a board meeting. Did you just you were mapping out the next few years of the ESA?
Absolutely, I enjoy those.
Have your priorities changed any for the next? You know, are there a different set of priorities for the coming 3 years than you had than the ESA had for the last few years?
I think you'll see very much the same priorities. We went through a very deep search, which I'm glad we've done. As an association, we feel very well positioned as the economy continues to struggle. We're in close connection with exactly where we need to be for our members and for the industry. And you'll continue to see a strong focus on federal and state policy, making sure that the right policies are in place. In the states, we're seeing tremendous opportunity. Governor Rick Perry from Texas came to E3, our trade show, and gave a terrific speech embracing the industry and welcoming it in the state of Texas. But he did that because the average wage in our industry is $93,000 a year, and they're doing very well in Austin and in Dallas and Houston right now. We're succeeding in that state, and he came with the idea of attracting more of our weight. Georgia, Louisiana, Michigan passed in tax incentives to attract our industry. So we're looking at opportunities in those areas. At the same time, we already talked about intellectual property and anti-piracy, continued focus there, but also a great focus on energizing our base through the Video Game Voters Network, which is right now it's about 160,000 people have signed up on their own. They come to our website, it's free, and they want to be notified when bad ideas are moving in the states or federally so they can be activated. And we've seen terrific traction and strong response from them, and we look forward to building that as a tool here in Washington.
When you take on policy issues and take them to Capitol Hill, does the effort change depending on if it's a game that you can buy for a console or a game that you can buy for a computer?
Not particularly, because remember, when you go to Capitol Hill, they're not experts. So when they show them a game, a lot of times they don't understand, and some games can be played across all platforms. But we do make sure we differentiate when we tell the piracy story. Right now, it's very difficult for certain types of games. They don't make them for the PC at all because piracy is so prolific. But on the other hand, you see new business models coming on the PC, which almost use piracy as a distribution model. So our industry encompasses a lot of different ways of interfacing with the consumer and making it a different experience, a positive one, depending on how they approach games. So we might differentiate slightly, but really they're just different ways for our industry to get to consumers.
One of the issues that you take on are internet-related issues.
Absolutely.
Is this because the nature of the business will change from, say, a console to something that will be only played online? And is that trend happening?
It's happening faster than you can realize. When you look at the interest in alternative worlds, the richest alternative worlds are video games.
Your Second Life, sure, that kind of thing?
Absolutely. We do those better than anyone else. And now virtually every game you buy is connected over the internet to someone else who's playing the same game. You have the opportunity to engage with them, whether you know them or not. So we look at the internet issues around privacy very, very seriously. And we also have through our foundation, we fund WebWise Kids, for example, which has a program called Missing, which teaches internet safety to kids in middle school so that they know how important it is not to be revealing personal information about yourself when you're online, and that includes within a video game context. So we take that seriously. Good policy in that area is good for us too.
You mentioned E3 before. The last couple of years, it's been you guys shrank it down, did the sort of mini-me version of E3 to try and get more business done, as opposed to the previous years where it was this huge extravaganza. And next year, it's going to be big again. Is it going to be like it was 2 or 3 years ago, or are there going to be changes? I just bring this up because this has traditionally been where the video game industry, makes a big splash and shows off the new titles. So I'm curious.
It's a great question, and it's one that I'm delighted to answer. We're going to put on a show that's reflective of the innovation, the growth, and the high energy entertainment of our industry. And you're right, the last couple of years it's been much smaller. We looked at it as an industry and said, we need that stronger, more positive energy and the excitement that comes from playing our games. I mean, as you know, Mike is covering the space. The intensity of our fans for our products is very high. We need a show that captures that energy and delivers on those expectations from our consuming public. So we've designed a show that's going to be the best of both. We learned a lot from the smaller show, and there are elements of that we're going to maintain, because for those that need to do business at the show, you need to be able to move around and conduct that business. But for the energy and for the the breadth of what we're offering, we needed to take some of those limits off, and we're looking at between 40 and 50,000 people will be in the Los Angeles Convention Center June 2 to June 4, and it's going to be a great show. And so far, we're seeing great interest from both within the industry and sponsors from outside the industry. We expect it's going to be very, very successful. We're really encouraged.
After the in the last year, you had some high-profile companies drop out of ESA, Activision, for example. Do you have the feeling that they're coming back, or can you tell us more about why they dropped out now?
Well, I think that that decision, it was Activision's decision to leave, and we have a mission on behalf of this industry that we're going to execute on. And their statements publicly as well as ours is that they very much appreciate what our role is, and we continue to have good communication with them. But we're moving forward, and we're going to see some interesting changes this year when it comes to membership. I think we'll be adding some members that will be exciting for ESA as well as for the industry. And it comes back to we're the only trade association that represents an industry that is bigger than movies at the box office. And it's growing between 20 and 40% a year. And that's our charge. Whether certain companies are in or out or not doesn't really change our focus.
As far as when we talk to other technology type companies, one of the things that always comes up at the discussion was international competition, especially especially domestically when you bring in folks under H-1B visas and all that to help with the work. Mm-hmm. Does that concern you as an industry, and are you getting international competition as far as programmers are concerned compared to domestic developers?
We are international. If you look at our members, they include Sony and Nintendo, which are Japanese companies, Ubisoft, which is a French company, and a whole range of other companies that come from both Japan and Europe, and Japan and Europe principally. So we're already there, and our games are made around the world. Our challenge here in this country is making sure we keep the jobs that belong here. And we have 200 universities around the country that are teaching video game curriculum or offering degrees. We need to make sure we're working with them and make sure that we've got really top talent coming out, because the H-1B visa issues impact our industry very seriously as well. We need relief in that space. We need to make sure we can get the good people. If not, the programming does get done to a greater degree outside of our country. And I personally think it's cheaper, but also it's a practical matter of just getting the work at all. Mm-hmm. If you have a cap imposed that you can't get enough qualified technical expertise in this country, it's not a matter of price. You have to get it done. So our job as a country is have an education system that produces the talent, an immigration system that allows the top talent in the world to come here. Those need to be in sync. But really, we need to be making sure we're competitive to keep these jobs here. That's what I worry about as the head of the U.S. Trade Association, is making sure we have that dynamic talent pool right here in the U.S.
So do you visit the education department and tell them about your concerns?
What's more interesting is they tend to visit us. Right now, we've had great discussions with Department of Defense, Homeland Security, Department of Education. The government interests in our products are very, very high because they can help them solve other problems.
Well, Michael, I was wondering one last thing.
Sure.
Please give me something I can walk away with here. I know these are both representative companies of yours, but Rock Band 2, Guitar Hero World Tour. They look kind of the same to me, so which one?
Listen, I've got to come down pretty heavily in favor of Rock Band 2.
Oh,
84
really?
tracks. It's a great product, but remember, you've got Lips and SingStar out there also from both Sony and Microsoft, which are really, really fun as well. So I'd encourage you to take a look at those. But Rock Band is really terrific, and the way I come down so easily on that is it's unanimous amongst my 3 kids who are 13, 15, and 17.
Oh, wait a minute. And Guitar Hero is from Activision, and they're not in the ESA right now.
They just have not to be a member, but right now that's the assessment.
One of the things that were talked about is that you're a gamer yourself.
Yes, absolutely. I enjoy them very much.
What do you play?
Well, it depends on which device, because when I travel, I tend to bring Spore these days on my DS along with Mario Karts, which is. When Mike visited with me a year or so ago, it's a great game. I play it with my kids. On the consoles, I have all 3 consoles and play a wide variety of games. Right now, what the kids are looking for at Christmas time, they want to see a little Rayman Raving Rabbits TV party. and then they want to see, my daughter's really interested in Animal Crossing for the Wii. On the PS3 and the Xbox 360, my son tends to press for more of the deeper games, like Dead Space, Fable 2, and
do you say no
2.
to? And do you say no to him?
Well, what I tell him is, as a responsible parent, of course, I'll have to try those out first, make sure they're appropriate for you.
Where do we go in the next 5 years? I know. Are we familiar with concepts consoles as a way of gaming, or are we going to see significant changes?
I think you're going to see consoles right now because they create that environment that consumers are finding so exciting and vibrant, and they're uniquely suited to that value chain. You continue to see them sell very well. I mean, analysts next year are looking at, on average over the year, over 1 million consoles being sold a month, and that, as long as you've seen that demand, you'll see them. That'll be the model. You're also seeing terrific experimentation in the PC space, so that you can have different types of games for everything. And the way I like to express it, I come from the telecom history historically, is it's the same 3 screens. Right now, the 3 screens are your plasma in your house or your television, your monitor in your office or on your computer, and on your handheld device. And I think you're going to see games pushed into all of those, so that wherever you are, you can enjoy the entertainment that suits you. I think that's where you'll see us moving. See lots of excitement in the mobile space.
Well, so I think of you as you come from the telecom industry before this, going back to some wonky stuff. What does the Obama transition mean for you? I think of you as sort of a Bush, a Republican, a Bush era guy, or not Bush, a Bush guy. So.
Well, the great news is that as much as I may be from the Bush administration, our industry is a bipartisan opportunity. When you look at our industry and we talk about high technology, you talk about growth, you talk about wages of $93,000 a year, those types of things have bipartisan appeal. So we're very encouraged to work with the Obama administration, especially when you look at the technology policy that he put together and was very, very vocal about during the campaign, as were his surrogates in the field. You look at valuing intellectual property, very, very important to us. A focus on broadband, very, very important, because that's the connective tissue now that's in our industry and creating so much value. You look at the issues around just making sure that technology is something that his industry is focused on, very powerful.
Michael Gallagher is the president and CEO of the Entertainment Software Association. Also joining us today on the Communicators, Mike Musgrove, who writes about consumer tech issues for the Washington Post. To both of you, thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Thanks.